I'm very happy to have Tommy here, because Tommy's experience both with physical products and digital products, and now he's setting a venture fund, which I guess is mostly focusing on the digital space. Somewhat. It's very interesting to hear your perspective on how you actually brought a very physical product, like speakers, to the market, and your learnings for that. So thanks a lot for coming, Tommy. And
okay, thank you. Thanks for joining. Yeah, this is going to be about physical products. It's going to be about speakers, like this one. And it's going to be about business to consumer marketing. So I'm talking to a consumer product, but I'm talking to a business relation, which then talks to a consumer relation. So this is the product. It's called a Libratone speaker. My name is Tommy. I founded the company back in 2010 with two co-founders. Basically to try and disrupt the way audio was consumed and used by end consumers. If you recall back in, I don't know, 10 years ago, speakers used to be like big black boxes, and you would have an amplifier and lots of cables. And we thought we'd like to disrupt that and give it some color, give it some wireless feeling, and also to make it more like a design and interior object instead of just a speaker. So the idea from the outskirts was to create something that would talk to an entirely different consumer audience. And I think that influenced the way that we used our marketing and the channels that we use, both marketing and for sales and for communications. So the presentation is going to be around how did we create the brand, because I think in the consumer world you have to have a strong brand, otherwise you might as well just white label your product. If you don't create a brand, you're losing the foundation of actually creating a position in the market that you can market to an end consumer. So the story is going to start about the branding side of it, and then I'm going to talk about the channels that we used for the product and for communication. So that's it. How much time we got?
as much time as you want, until Friday.
Like
no, we have a total 1 hour or something like that, including Q&A.
Yeah, should be some time for Q&A as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so the theme, as you can see, is how can I've used the term a startup. I don't know whether this is going to be startup-ish, but that's my take on it. For offline marketing, there's a lot of knowledge on online marketing. I guess you're all proficient in that already. So this is going to be talking about offline marketing. It's a physical product. It's vastly different marketing a physical product compared to an online product. There's so much you can do in a pure online world, and you don't have to care about stock, and you don't have to care about the physical appearance of your product and stuff like that. Whereas if you have a physical product, there's a lot you can do with that as well, but it's a different game. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about how does it work alongside online marketing. Okay, so the case is going to be Libratone, and just very shortly what it was. We founded the company in late 2009. Again, this was, you probably recall, the iPhone was released in 2007, which kind of kicked off the wireless audio revolution at the time. AirPlay came around. If you have an iPhone, you probably know AirPlay. Bluetooth, stuff like that. So some mega trends shifted at the time because the wireless audio came about. The liberation of audio from LPs and CDs to becoming streams, either by just downloading stuff to your phone or streaming from your phone, was a mega trend shift as well. And the rise of Apple as an audio provider. They left the audio business themselves in 2008, got rid of all their audio at the time, and actually were looking for partners instead, which was also kind of like a mega trend shift. So we came about, we would focus on wireless speakers for mobile devices, focus on design, interior, and female customers. If you ever wandered into a hi-fi store like 7-8 years ago, as a woman, you would probably be running screaming out the other way. Audio has always been marketed towards men. It's about watts, it's about decibels, stuff like that, tech specs. And we wanted to go in the entirely opposite direction. Never talk specs, never talk tech stuff, but only talk experience and how would this fit your lifestyle. which was completely in opposition to the marketing at the time. We decided early on we wanted Apple as a customer, because Apple had kind of like the feeling of the customers that we would like: urban, design-oriented, affluent consumer that we thought would fit the brand we were trying to create nicely. So we made the Apple agreement 5 months after we created the company, before we had a single speaker. I'll come back to that, which was very good. One of the things they had was the Apple stores, and they had Apple Online. So it's kind of like the best, probably the best shopping experience worldwide, I would say, for consumer products. And we would like to be in there, so we decided we want to go with them. And the company, I left the company in 2016. We were exited to an Asian consortium back in late 2014, which acquired the majority of the shares in the company. So I'm no longer with the company, so this is the story of has been. Cool, that's it. Let's see, on the agenda is, what did we use, what kind of measures did we use for our positioning? We had a communications platform that we established very early on. We had a sales platform and a product platform. And those three go in conjunction, so you cannot take one out and leave the other one in. On the product platform, we're going to be talking about point of sales, what happens in the store, what happens at that place versus online. What did we do besides just kind of like selling to consumers? We created a lot of partnerships on charity and with artists and designers. I'm going to be talking a bit about how can you actually use that. If you have a strong brand, there's a lot of other brands that want to co-brand with you, and you can use those relations very strongly in your sales efforts as well. And lastly, I'm going to talk a bit about your integration on PR and social media. Okay, I think one of the most important things as a consumer brand that you need to do is actually create a brand. Again, if you don't have a brand towards the consumer, you don't have any position that you can actually market. I think one of the first things you need to consider when you're starting a consumer brand is, so how should the positioning be? What is going to be your brand values? We spent 3 months in a summer house, the 3 co-founders, trying to figure out how would we kind of like ride the megatrends that I mentioned before and kind of like translate that to a branding experience. So we chose 5 brand values. One, that we wanted to target an urban customer. Urban in the sense that you have to have some kind of critical mass of consumers closely knit together that will influence each other. So if you talk to some in a group, they will virally talk to other people in their closest range. So an urban customer is easier to target because you can do it much more specifically. We were also of the thinking at the time that urban consumers would be more design-oriented. They would be more interested in interior, stuff like that. So the urban consumer is also typically more affluent than people living in rural areas. So it also fitted the profile of Apple, who also targets mostly urban consumers. We're a Scandinavian company, so we thought that why not, when we do the design of the speaker, try to blend from the Scandinavian design tradition, i.e. make the product very simple, very minimalistic. We used a lot of thought going into what coloring should it have, what kind of fabric should be used on the speaker. As it is an interior design object, we would like the fabric to be like furniture. So when you brought this into your home, it would feel like a piece of furniture, not like a speaker. So kind of blend the brand and the actual visuals of the brand with a very tactile and very nice feeling to actually touch the speaker. This is not the one that we had at first. The first ones were actually with cashmere. So you had the feeling of actually touching cashmere when you touch the speaker. It was very, very nice. So we used the minimalistic design tradition of Scandinavian designers. We thought that would fit the brands nicely. We would like to have the brand to be friendly. So what does friendly mean? If you go back to what audio used to be like, it used to be like amplifiers with 30 buttons and knobs and stuff like that. And that's an unfriendly experience. Most people use like on and off and volume, and they know maybe 2 or 3 other buttons. The rest you don't know. It's unfriendly experience to go and actually listen to a traditional hi-fi setup. So we said we want the product only to have one button. You should be able to kind of control everything with one button and an app. And at the time, this was in 2010, apps for devices was non-existent. So we were some of the first ones with actual apps for devices at the time. So everything should be done with one button on the speaker, otherwise an app. And also we said that, okay, when you're in the smartphone era, you need to be able to update your product. So once we got new functionality out, we will be able to download that to the speaker and give it, extra functionality. Which is also kind of like a friendly experience that you actually buy the product. And that actually ties to the next one, which is long-lasting. This was on the backside of the financial crisis, which was like 2008, 2009. So before that, everyone was buying Porsches and expensive stuff and throwing it away once they got tired of it. So we said, okay, people are not that affluent anymore. They're not that well off. So we want to give them a product that is long-lasting. So it kind of like grows on you with its age. So we tried to make it something you would buy and then you would want to keep it, not want to throw it out. Which was also kind of in contrast to the years before the financial crisis. And lastly, we would want to be a bold brand. So we would want to do marketing and sales and positioning that was very bold in the market. I'm going to get back to how we actually did that. So this was the brand values of the company. We defined those very strongly, and everything we did from onwards kind of like also always had to tie into those brand values. If they did not, we did not do it. So those values, how do they relate to the competition out there? Most competition we had at the time were either in the kind of like hi-fi or traditional audio space, or they were up here in the gadget kind of like tech stuff. So it would be like Bang & Olufsen or Bowers & Wilkins, Bose type down there, and it would be Logitech stuff up at the tech side. And we said, okay, this is red ocean because there's a lot of competition. They all fight each other and they fight on the same playing field. And we said, okay, we want to be in the blue ocean, of course, so let's go somewhere else. So we said, we want to use the positioning of the brand to be in those areas instead, kind of on the trend setting side, looking for a design object, and matching the interior of your home. And by doing so, we will kind of like leave the competition where it sits, or sat at the time, and create our own playing field and say, hey, if you want to compete with us, come to our playing field, and then we can compete on our terms. So the branding also made it possible to stand out versus the other brands and use that positioning we had to create our own playing field, which is, again, as a consumer brand, a very strong way to actually compete. The good thing about this is if you look at these positions, it's kind of like a male-dominated space. Whereas, I know this is stereotyping, but at least female is mostly over here and unisex mostly up here. And we thought at the time, okay, this space to be as a brand is kind of like the past, whereas these areas kind of like points into the future instead. So we also tried to leave the competition behind in the positioning that we did. And this also taught us, doing this analysis, it taught us that, okay, we should never speak to a male audience because then you're speaking to the past. So we never did any ads, we never did any marketing or any sales towards male customers, never, ever. Which was also kind of odd at the time. So that's how we set the brand, and this was all done before we created the company. So this is kind of like the foundation of the company. Again, consumer products, you need a strong brand. And you need to be able to talk to the brand all the time, otherwise you're just wasting your money. So let's talk about the communications platform that we tried to create. This is one of the first ads we had. And if you're a guy, you're going to be at the time you're going to be disturbed by this. Your hi-fi just died. So we put this on the front page of all the ads we did. Kind of like saying, some smack in the face of the men. What you have does not work anymore. There's a new player in town. This was on the front of some of the ads. So your hi-fi just died. Don't worry, we got the killer. And then we kind of like, you can't really see because it's very light, but these are red. So some of the first pigs red were brightly red, which was completely in contrast to anything you'd see before. I mean, colored speakers did not exist at the time. They do now, of course, but in 2009-10, they did not exist. So some of the first ads we did were just to position ourselves as a clear alternative. There was always kill what is the past, come into our playing field and come play with us. So those are some of the ads. We would also talk to the friendliness, and we would talk to the ease of use of the speakers. That's another ad we ran. Easy no, very easy no, very very easy. Bingo. So it's kind of it's playful in the sense that this was an actual ad. So this was the ad. There was nothing else there. Sometimes we put a little logo down here with the bird on it, but basically that was the ad. So we would also try to create a communication language when you saw the actual font, when you saw the messaging, that you would kind of comprehend that as being a Libratone ad without even seeing a product, just seeing how we kind of build up the messaging. Another thing that was very which was the past that we saw is that you needed two speakers, a left and a right, and you had to sit in the center to get the business experience, listening experience. And we thought that's the past, because if you listen to sound in your home, you're probably going to be playing with your kids, you're going to be making food, or you're going to be doing something else. You're definitely not sitting in the center of your couch, listening to left and right and all that kind of stuff. So one of the things we did that was product-wise, and we patented that in the product, was that we could play stereo from one speaker. So you just put one speaker in the room and you would actually have the stereo perspective wherever you were in the room. So this was something that we could play with again, marketing-wise, that we could say, one is all you need. You don't need left and right. You don't need a pair. You don't need to position a pair of speakers. You can just have one, and it will give you that experience that you're going to be looking for. But we used a product feature as a branding feature and a kind of like a communications feature as well. Then we played with the word liberty. Again, we were freeing people of cables, freeing people of an old school experience, and we wanted to play with the Libratone name and the word liberty. So in a lot of the ads, we were actually playing with those two words in conjunction, so using them, intertwined between each other. And it's a different spelling, same meaning. Again, in the sense that we're trying to really push the name of the company and the name of the brand, but give it positive connotations to words that are very positive.
Okay. Sorry, took some time.
Ah, that's better. Here comes the coloring. I can see the red. And then okay, much better. Now you see how nice they are. So this is an actual ad as well, run in a lot of magazines. The one thing you see here is you never see any text back. So we would never put, normally if you see like an ad for a speaker, you would see so many decibels, blah blah blah, and there would be like a list out here on the side and saying this is why you need to buy the speaker. We would never do that, And again, I'm stereotyping, but most female do not buy tech specs, and we will only talk to female clients or customers, and then we would convince them to buy the product and have them convince their male friends or husbands to go acquire our product. So the positioning and the way that we would use visuals, and always the product itself would be very, very prominent in the ads, was never to use tech specs. So if the guys wanted to have tech specs, they could go to the website and look at it. Of course, it was there, but never out front when we do the actual marketing. So it's a very, very distinct way of communicating the brand, the values of the brand, the visuals of the actual product, because we thought that the product visuals were so appealing that we might just smack them in the face of the consumer and have that sell the product instead. Then when we launched products, we did that typically every 6 months or so. We would hold events. This is one out in, I think it's in Nordhavn or somewhere, out of Fritz Hansen's showroom. I see a lot of furniture. And we would only invite female bloggers and female journalists. Again, because if you want to invite the male guys, you would get like hi-fi journalists. and they would be asking questions. Oh, so how much does this speaker output, and how does it does this and this and that? And we hated those questions, and we didn't want to kind of communicate it. So we just refrained from inviting them. So we only invited journalists from magazines and websites and blogs that had a very female audience. And of course we said during the events, you cannot tweet, you cannot blog about this while we do it, and they did, of course. So we created a stir within that environment, which then spread to the other environments. So again, it's a way of controlling your messaging very, very tightly, and have it like zip out to the other, magazines. Very deliberate. That's the underlying of having the brand and establishing a communication platform around the brand. Then of course we had to sell some products, otherwise we wouldn't survive. One of the things. Oh, sorry. Something happened. It says Conrad. This is London. This is in Chelsea. This is, I don't know, Elam Spoons times 10 in exclusivity. So we decided early on that we wanted Apple as a sales partner. So we would be on sale in Apple stores and in Apple online. But we also acknowledged that most of the people buying our product would be very design interested or interior focused people. And where do they go and look for product? They go in Denmark they go to places like, Norman, Elam's Bolighuset, Hay, whatever you go and look for that. In London you would go to Conrad. In Paris you would go to Colette. This gentleman actually bought 5 of the first speakers that we sold. Mr. Lagerfeld, which was kind of very funny. Again, here you would go to Elam's. But the real thing was that we wanted people to go and go and experience product in those design stores. So we have very limited supply there. So we're trying to create this, fear of missing out by having only like 10, 15, 20 speakers in each store, which would quickly sell out, create the buzz around the product being sold out, but then trying to make them go to our primary partner, the sales partner, which would be Apple, and then buy the product there instead. So something about, pushing your consumers to the outlet which would position your product alongside furniture and stuff that looks cool. So I would kind of like rub my brand against other brands to take advantage of the value of those brands, and then use that to position our sales channels towards Apple. Was that clear? How we did that? So we were in different Apple stores, the one in San, the one in New York. So the idea was again to have a primary sales channel which would be positioned by other sales channels in short supply. The thing also was that at the time initially we had some production problems, so I don't know whether this was actually a deliberate decision or it's kind of like based on what we had, but it worked out. Okay, so the product platform. I would encourage anyone with a consumer product to create a good logo. Because if you have a good logo, again, you can just put it anywhere, and the recognition of the logo is so strong that at some point you don't even need to do positioning. You just put the logo out there, and people are immediately going to be referencing to that. This is I don't know if you can see. This is a nightingale. So you probably know Hans Christian Andersen, the fairy tale of the nightingale, where the nightingale is kept by the emperor in China and blah blah blah, and then is liberated at the end. And this liberation story and the fairy tale and all that stuff around that kind of like fitted nicely towards what we wanted to. We wanted to liberate sound. So we built a story around the bird and the nightingale, and the liberation. And most people have a very positive view on birds, and especially a nightingale that sings nicely. So we spent a lot of time kind of like perfecting the actual logo of the company, and again, it's the best investment we've ever done to actually do that. And then alongside the actual logo, again, we created the messaging. Short, to the point messaging that would fit. So once you saw this, you would think of this, and once you saw that, you would think of this. So you only have to put very, very distinct pieces of your brand in front of the consumer. They will immediately recognize what was going on. Another thing we did, this is about the design, now we're getting into the product. This is called the Libratone brand carrying details. We would always have 5 things that were on each product that we sold. And here it goes. The logo tag, this one, would always be visible on the speaker. The fabric and the colors, distinct fabric that would feel nicely once you touched it. One primary interface for the button, here. A geometric shape, round, square, triangular, whatever it was, but always a very, very basic geometric square. And then the white surface. We never created a black product, which was good because that was in opposition to anything else at the time. If you look at the TV, well, you can get a white TV today, but at the time you could only get black products. Every hi-fi, whatever you had, was either wood or black. And we decided early on that we want to be in complete opposition to that. Most people have like white walls in their home, so black products they do not look good. Whereas if you have coloring and you have white stuff, it looks better. So again, it fitted the design proposition of the company, but it also made, again, the brand stand out as a clear alternative to what was out there. So these 5 things would always be in any Libratone product and in any position that we did, and we'd never go away from that. It also made it very, very simple to market these products, because it gave a direction also. If we had these, this was one of the first speakers, this was another one of the first ones. So we if you want to go for the geometric shape, you could always go for what would be the next. This would be a cylinder, this would be like a round speaker, and it created a very nice product family. So if you bought one, it would be completely natural to buy the next, because they would fit nicely with coloring and shapes and the look and feel. And we tried to also make it so you would have speakers for the different rooms of the house and the different purposes of the audio in the house. And these would be multi-room speakers, so you can use them in conjunction. So there was a thinking around the design, but also of the product family. You do not want, as a consumer product company, to have a one-off purchase. You want the consumer to come back and buy more from you. And how do you do that? You create a natural path from what you have now to what you create, and you make the rebuying, the repurchase possible doing that. That was a clear intention as well. Then we did something that we also put a lot of effort in. Most people will say we like colors in our home, but 80-90% will buy boring stuff. Go look at your own home. Probably most of what you have is going to be gray, white-ish, neutral. So we created those. This was one of the speaker Libratone set. So this was the main colors of, and they would, I don't know, 80% of all the sales would be those 2 colors. But we would always use all the different colors in the positioning. So we never did any ads with these 2 guys. We always, put out ads with all the coloring on, because that gets you excited, and you can talk about it. You can say, hey, this would fit my couch or my pillows or whatever you have. And then we made it possible that you could actually buy a speaker and have 2 other colors, in the box. I don't know whether you had a set, but what you would get was a speaker in one of the neutral colors, and you would have 2 colors, and we had different color combinations, and you can just unzip the actual cloth, take it off, and put another coloring on. So if you decided to make up your room or whatever you did, you could just give your audio equipment that color that would fit your appearance. And you could buy them, all the other colors that I had here, you could buy them on the website. So again, the long-lasting thing of the brand, this speaks to the long-lasting aspect of the product as well. That you don't have to throw out the speaker because it's yellow and you want a red one. You just buy a new piece of cloth around it, and then you're good to go. So it's a way, again, be true to the brand values and be true to having sold a long-lasting product to your consumer. Important for the long-term relation. Cool. A bit about the product platform again. On the what did we do in the stores? One of the things is today you can sell product like this online. Of course you can, because I just buy one from Libratone, one from Bose, one from Bang & Olufsen. I listen to all 3 and I skip back the 2 I don't want. That's how you do it today. You've got like 14 or 30 days return right, so it's not a problem. back in the time, it was not that easy, so you had to give people a kind of like a listening experience, in store. So we created small stands like this, where you would put a speaker on, and you have a little try me. You can go with your phone, put it directly in, and listen to the speaker. The thing is, this was not just for use in the actual sales area. We do like small pop-ups in different stores, in design stores. Just put some of these in at different places. You can go in and try the speaker and buy it online in that store. So again, a way to get the product kind of in front of the audience, have them experience it. And again, we wanted the people to touch the product. There's such people forget that touching an actual product is a very, very strong and very emotional feeling, almost. And if you have a product that is emotionally appealing, you're way ahead of your competition already there. And we wanted people to touch and hear and feel and kind of like interact with the product. So it's a very, very clever way of actually getting the product out in front of customers. As I said, the logo we had was a nightingale. So it was obvious that we could use some of the messaging around fairy tales and Hans Christian Andersen around that. There's a lot of positive vibes around him and the fairy tales that he has. So we did a lot of kind of like charity with organizations like UNICEF. So this would be, I don't know if you can see it, but this is a Libratone sit, which is embroidered by a young girl called Stine Spetsberg. So she would sit down with those claws here, and she would embroider kind of like the story of some of the fairy tales on the actual speakers. It's very cool. Some of the pictures here. And the thing is, then we would have, I think we had 10 of each or so. Oh, no, we had 10 in total of these. So it's stories from different fairy tales embroidered on these speakers, and we would then auction them. So UNICEF would create an auction online, and of course we would use it as a kind of communication angle, and we did a lot of marketing around that, not to sell, but to reinforce the brand and the brand values. And I think these were, I think they were $5,000 each, and they were kind of ripped away. And it's the cheapest, if you can say it might be a bit cynical, but it's the cheapest marketing money ever spent, in the sense that the vibe that gets to the brand is very, very strong, and it reinforces the brand values again. So we did a lot of that as well, and also provided, of course, all the proceeds from that to UNICEF. So we did not earn anything on that. Another thing we did was to do art and design cooperations. There is an upcoming Berlin artist called Lizzie Courage, and she did what is called, it's called suggestive decoupage. So it's actually comic books, erotic comic books. So she would cut out figures from those books, and we would put that on the top of the speaker and put it behind a covering here so it would not tear. And we would then auction these speakers again the same way as I talked about before. That was the live, this is the lounge. So the speaker was not a speaker anymore, it was kind of like a design object, and it was a rare one because there would only be like 10, 15, I think we had 50 of those. But again, it was a very, very rare, unique object that you could acquire. And we made it very, very in small volumes to make sure that, again, it has this feeling of, I have to go get it, I have to buy it now. But again, it reinforced the brand. It was a cool brand, and we added, co-ops around that for the brand to be reinforced. This is some of it. Right. So the integration this was all offline, as you saw, right? So this, again, creating the brand, creating a communications platform, you can use that offline or online. So I mean, the branding itself is not tied to any physical or non-physical world. Creating a strong sales platform around that, in the stores that you actually have the product. Stores that are for showcasing and stores that are for sales. It's very okay to have both. It's actually quite strong to have both. Creating a product platform, again, if you have a product that does not live the brand, there's kind of like a disconnect. So you have to make sure once you do the product that it lives the brand. So I think again, in the brand definition, you have to make sure that what you're actually able of making afterwards can live up to the brand. Otherwise, you're going to be disappointing the consumer, right? So very, very strong focus on that in the product platform. And then making sure that what you do kind of like fans out. If you just consider someone who sells products, I mean, that lowers your brand. So you have to do other stuff that kind of reinforces your brand. If you see some of the very, very good brands, they never talk product. They talk about, you know, what do they stand for, what do they do for the world and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the things we learned is that the most powerful marketing we could do was down here. It was not in the actual platform for marketing, it was in the co-op platform, you know, joining forces with other brands that we could kind of like rub shoulders with, and they would reinforce what we would stand for, which was very good. Apple was by far the most powerful for us, and I think, you know, we were on sale in Apple Online and Apple stores in Europe first, then it spread to the US, and then it spread to Asia and Middle East. We established offices in Boston, in Dubai, Singapore, and in Shanghai to kind of like work with Apple in those regions. So I think, you know, getting an early, very early, strong brand partner as a consumer product is very, very valuable. So lastly, the integration to the online world. Even though we did not want it to be so, you know, the speakers were reviewed by more like the classical audio magazines. Luckily, the speakers were actually quite good. We never kind of touted the quality of the speakers. It was kind of like an underlying, of course the sound is good, we don't have to promote it. It's all the other stuff we promote. So the underlying thesis was that we should always make products that are superior, but not talk about it. So when they were reviewed, we got quite good reviews in those magazines as well, even though some of them would try to drag it down because they did not like the positioning of the company. We did not talk hi-fi language, which was kind of like in opposition to what they did. And of course, we used it extensively, you know, Facebook and those platforms to promote the products. These days, there's a lot of interaction with, you know, with Instagram communities and Pinterest communities. You know, people taking pictures of the use of the product in their home or when they're traveling or when they're outside. And we encourage, you know, people to share experiences between themselves. So we're not actually part of the discussion. We kind of like, we facilitate the discussion, and we do stuff to encourage people to share experiences. But instead of kind of mending with the actual talks, we sit on the sidelines and, you know, facilitate the communication. Because the peer-to-peer discussion between consumers is much stronger than any marketing that we can do. So we try to stay out of the actual communication, but only facilitate. A lot of good pictures have been taken over time of the product, still is, and I think the discussion now has gotten, it has its own life, and we don't have to do that much anymore. We kind of like Libratone on speakers now, but also in headsets, in-ear, on-ear, and whatever you have, and it's going to be even further out than that. So it's kind of like becoming a wider audio brand, not just speakers. And I think the way to go still is be true to the brand. And when you make new products and new product categories, make sure that they adhere to the brand again and reinforce what you already have. That's been kind of like the foundation of the company since it was instilled, and it still is. So again, a lot of interaction on Pinterest and Instagram and those platforms and blogs actually as well. Yeah. So that's basically it. Most of it is offline, as you see. I think that was the theme here as well. But I think most of what I said applies offline and online. And I think the initial parts, again, creating the brand and a communication platform that's kind of like the core of what you do is my most important learning in this. That if you don't have that, you know, all your money just gets wasted, you know, once you try to promote it. And you have to live the brand. You live it in how you communicate, and you live it in how you do actual product, and you live it in how you interact with, you know, kind of like society around you. And if all that fits together, then your communication becomes like times 10 in in value, and as you pay much less to reach a much wider audience if all those things go together. Okay.
So maybe I could start with the first one because you know the Apple partnership you struck was
the what? Sorry.
The partnership with Apple was so important for you.
Yeah.
And that seemed to me, if anyone would ask me and say, my strategy is to partner with Apple, I would say, good luck.
Yeah.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
So could you maybe elaborate a little bit about how you actually got that and what's your learnings from that?
Sure.
Whether it was something you would do again? And
yeah, sure. I think the thing is that most people think that Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft are very big corporates and they do not like to talk to startups, which is completely wrong. Most of them actually get their best ideas and best partnerships with small startups because that's where most of the real innovation comes from these days. It does not come from corporates. And they're grown up to be very big corporates now. So we approached Apple 1 month after we created the company because we said, let's go back to the first slide, because the thing that we did with the actual brand, whoops, a lot of slides, this. So when we sat down and defined this and said, okay, this is going to be what the company is going to be about, we said, okay, who would fit that profile? You know, what other brand would fit that profile? Apple had urban customers. They had a very bold positioning as well. They do long-lasting products as well. They're quite friendly. I mean, an iPhone compared to a Nokia phone at the time was very friendly. And they have an extreme focus on user experience, and ease of use. The only thing that they may not be doing is kind of like the Scandinavian, design, but they have a very minimalistic design tradition as well, right? So it may be more kind of worldwide, but it's still very minimalistic. It tied very nicely into our value proposition. So all those things in that core value proposition fitted Apple's brand nicely. And then they had one thing that we did not have, which was sales outlets that would speak as much to a male audience as to a female audience. And we did not want to sell our products in the hi-fi stores because we think that's going to be a dead end for us. We're never going to get a female customer to go into hi-fi equipment and get good service. It wouldn't happen. At least at the time, maybe they do today, but at that time, no. So we wanted a partner that would fit the brand and would have sales outlets, worldwide that would fit that brand position. So that was kind of like the idea. Why go with them? And then we went to California. We set up some meetings. Just cold called them and said, "Hey, we got this new brand." The good thing at the time was that they left the audio business 2 years before we came in. So they sold their own stuff off and did not have speakers. So they had the iPhone, they had the iPad and iPods at the time, but they did not have any speakers or headphones. So I think we hit them at the right time with a brand and a positioning and products that they liked. They liked the design, they liked the way we thought about how we're going to communicate this. And the actual agreement took, 2 or 3 months to negotiate, and that was before we even had a product. So at the time we just went, what we had, just to show you, was this. So we had some renderings and what we would like to do, and what we were going to do, and how it was going to be positioned. And so we had, 20, 25 pages of renderings, and that was it. So as much as you think that it's going to take like 2 years to get such an agreement in place, it didn't. It took a very short time. But you have to be prepared. It took like 3 months to prepare what we were going to be presenting, of course. But because it was so well thought out and the brand positioning was in place, they said, that's cool. If you're going to be ready by, this was 2010, we made the agreement in June, and they said, if you can be ready by Christmas sales, we're cool. You're going to be in all the Apple stores in Europe, and that's how we started. So to answer your question, I think most large corporations are very open to small companies and to talking to them. Of course, you have to be serious. You have to have a well thought out plan, but it's not like corporates talk to corporates only. I think these days it's more like this. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
You showed the slide where you compared your position with the position of other competitors.
Yeah.
And I think like, especially in the last few
This one?
years,
Yeah.
in the last few years, all the other competitors also moved into.
Yeah, why do you think so?
Yeah, probably it's the best direction.
Yeah.
But what do you now do to differentiate yourself from the?
Well, I think you still have the first mover effect. You know, there's no doubt that it's becoming much more fiercely competitive. One of the things is actually to widen the brand, to widen in the sense that it used to be only speakers. Today it's in-ears, it's headsets. We're going to be expanding that even more now, kind of like creating what you call sound spaces. So you can kind of like interconnect headphones and speakers and stuff like that. Even more focus on the user experience of the product. But you're right in the sense that I think I list 20 brands today that are trying to create, with fabrics and colors and stuff like that. It just goes to prove that I think that the position that we took was right. But it's getting more competitive, of course it is.
What was your biggest mistake while founding the company or throughout the whole process of being a CEO at Libratone?
The biggest mistake? Underestimating demand. Because it's a physical product, and what you have. So if you want to go in an Apple store, they give you a forecast in March, April for the Christmas sale. So they expect, okay, so we're going to be selling this much and blah 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 blah, and that's kind of like how you prepare your production environment for the speaker. And we would always be, there would be more demand than we had supply. But it's also a working capital issue because it costs you money because it's going to be producing stuff start of the year that's going to be sold end of the year. So I don't call it a mistake, but I think we were underestimating the actual demand, and it's very hard to go back and do more supply very late towards the kind of like the holiday season. But forecasting is extremely difficult. I mean, does a given speaker become a success or does it not? If it does not, you're sitting on a pile of stock. So it's kind of like, you need to balance that.
How did you initially figure out the pricing positioning of the product?
Good question. Actually,
this thing that ties into that. As I said, we're going to be targeting the typical Apple customer, right? Which we think is affluent, so better than it probably sits in the upper 25 to 35% of the population, income-wise. So we had very good input from them saying that we would like speakers in those price points. So they have a lot of insight. If a speaker costs like $499 US, then this creates such a demand. So we used a lot of the insights on price points also to create
product points that would fit price points. So at one point we actually made kind of like a matrix saying, okay, if we got this much money to play with pricing wise, what can we do of a speaker? So sometimes we would do decisions based on we want to do a speaker like this, and we want to have a kind of like a functionality point like this, and it needs to cost this. But you quickly learn that if kind of like this does not fit an attractive price point, then you're off. So during all the time we had intense discussions with retailers on if this is the price point, what does a consumer expect from that price point? And then you kind of target the product development to that price point. So it's kind of very closely intertwined.
How did you get the technology for the speakers?
We developed it ourselves. So we had a quite large development department. Some of the stuff, the tweeters and stuff like that are standard, but the actual amplifier platform, the industrial design, and all the design we did ourselves. So most of it was done, 80% in-house of the speakers and the software platform as well.
And what was your initial team? Or what kind of backgrounds did the people have? Did you have a lot of designers or?
In the initial team, we were 5. So we were two with an audio background, 2 with a commercial background, and an industrial design. So we had I think the critical parts of doing that was in the founding team. which I think is again a very important thing, is that it's very, very difficult to. I mean, we could never have done this with two audio engineers. They would have done a black speaker with cables and an amplifier. So I think one of the success criteria is that if this is going to be what you're doing, and you're going to be completely taking what you're doing in opposition to what most people are going to be doing, you need to have those skills in place. I had a company before, and I had a commercial background. The industrial designer had worked for some of the car companies, so he was very familiar with again fabrics and leathers and stuff, interior surfaces in cars, which came in very handy because the way to use these days, this is kind of like rubberish, and this is cloth, and this is kind of like other stuff. So his feeling about surfaces was very, very handy for creating that design statement that we wanted in the speakers. But it was a diverse team, so if that answers your question, I think that was.
I guess product development also needed a lot of investment. So did you just put your own money in, or did you get some?
The first 2 years, I funded the company, and then we got a venture funding. So we had venture funding on the side of the founders, and we had that all the way until we exited. Yeah. So it did require a lot of money.
I have a question concerning the market entry for the Asian markets.
The what? Sorry.
The market entry for the Asian markets.
Yeah.
Which marketing measures did you follow in Asia?
In Asia, well, I think the good thing about the Scandinavian design tradition, that it actually fits the Asian way of thinking design quite nicely. Well, there's a bling side of Asia, but there's a strong underlying current of minimalistic thinking and design design liking. So I think the product themselves were very, very kind of easy to market to an Asian audience. But we used the Apple ecosystem again, so we went through the Apple system and the Apple online. We did the marketing alongside Apple. So in a lot of the ads in Asia, we would just be sitting, if there was an ad, or we would be alongside iPhones and stuff, we'd be like accessory to that.
So you built on offline marketing in Europe, and
Yeah.
then used this asset you built up in Europe,
Yeah.
transferred it somehow.
Yeah. So the brand was initially created in Europe and in the US, and we used kind of the thrust of that to go into Asia with the power of Apple to back it up. So I think we went into Asia in 2012, 2013, which was kind of a more online, based push at the time, because Facebook and some of those platforms were getting very, very strong, and some of the Asian, the WeChat, and we used that more extensively. So it was more like an online push, if that's your question.
Yeah.
At the time, it was, yeah.
So have you thought about offline measures?
Well, we did offline measures, but again, offline measures are typically more expensive,
Yeah.
and the effectiveness of the online measures, is what was getting much better at the time. So I think the targeting at that time went more online. But again, with a physical product, it's very, very difficult to do only online. You need to be in front of the customer. They need to be able to touch your product and hear it, because it's a speaker, right? Yeah.
And how did you get the idea? Like, what's the story behind them? How did you find the customer need for the female segment for such a product?
Well, I think, again, as I said, we were 3 founders at the time, and there was a range of megatrends changing, right? One thing being that audio was going wireless. So the liberation of audio from cables and going wireless was one thing, which was kind of like maybe the catalyst of all the other stuff, because once you don't have cables, you can place your speaker anywhere, right? So it does not have to sit on a wall or be in a corner of your home. So once you do that, it gets natural to put it anywhere in your house, right? If that gets natural, you want it to not look like a speaker. You want it to be like an interior design object, right? Which makes the design more important. If it becomes a design object, you want it to blend in with what you have elsewhere, because that's how you buy, pillows and vases and whatever you have in your home, right? So here comes the coloring and put on top of that. The other thing was that because of the smartphone, you would have a completely new way of using music. And again, if you place the speakers around in your home, you got away from the stereo side as well, so you could go for the one speaker instead of two. So I think, and all those things again, the design and the interior design thing, talk to a female audience, making again for the thinking, okay, we need to be in sales channels that will talk to a female audience. So there's almost like kind of like a range of decisions and opportunities that sits very nicely together. And if you think all those in conjunction, that makes up the brand.
But did you do some market research? Like, how did you know that
we
women
did.
actually
No.
like?
We did it.
Speakers?
I hate market research.
But like own experience,
because-
my girlfriend,
because-
my sister, no one likes speaker. Like none of the female I know.
Yeah.
personally. Like how did you?
No, but the thinking was that, and the reason I say I hate market research is that, they typically come to the conclusion that is already there. I mean, they never go radical on stuff. They would never come up with this. And we thought there's a lot of megatrends changing. How can we ride the megatrends changes? That was the idea behind this brand, right? So hence we used a lot of time, and I think what we listed all the changes we could see, and how would they work together, and if they work together, what would be a brand and a product positioning that would take advantage of those changes, and how can we create, and I think that's the important thing as well, how can we create then kind of like a blue ocean for us and leave the competition over here? So the thing is also, if you just wanted to be here, you'd be like in complete competition from day one, and you'd be killed. So we had to, if we want to do this, let's try and do something that creates a playing field for us that is different than the other guys. That's the intent. Yeah.
How did you manage to present your product as an innovative product while there were a bunch of competitors? For example, you showed a slide that says you only need one product. While stereo speakers in one package was a thing. Your customers could have easily found sound bars and stereo speaker systems in one package from the nearest every gun, but they somehow believe that your product was something new. How did you manage that?
Well, they can today, but this is now we're almost in 2018. This was like when we started the company.
So that wasn't any sound bar.
That was not that was not available. No, I think we were some of that pioneered that concept at the time. So it was a matter of also, this one, right? It was a matter of actually trying to take a product feature and use it as a communication feature. So, and it was also a matter of actually understanding the use case. Again, if you have a product that you can move around in your home, it does not sit in a different in a fixed position, and you don't have to have a left and right, and you don't sit in the couch, right? So again, the mega trend is that sound is liberated from cables and the positioning, and because of that, you want a different use case around it. The use case being that you can be anywhere, and the actual sound is going to be as good as if you were sitting like in left, right, and triangle. So again, the use case came from the megatrend change and the product features that we have, and this is just promoting the use case, because again, you're not sitting in your couch. You're doing some stuff. Most people are doing something else when they listen to music, right? So again, it's using features of the product in the platform. Yeah.
And you have already built your partnership on Apple. I think as tempting as it is to have a strong partner, but it's also kind of risky. So were you afraid that they would drop you at some point, or that?
No, and they typically don't. No, they don't drop partners like that. The good thing about big corporates is once you get close to them, and of course you have to do well. I mean, if we weren't selling one single speaker, we'd probably be out, right? But as long as if you provide what you should be providing, I mean that is sales, i.e. kickback for them in the stores, then they will work with you. And of course, we did not only sell in Apple stores, we sold in all kinds of, we went further down, and we sold in different stores as well. So we used the Apple kind of like as a ramp to come into other channels and other retail chains. So at the time it was the first and most important partner, but it was not the only one. So we could lose Apple, so to speak. It would be a loss, of course, but it would not, critically, affect the company.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's one.
Well, one more, one
Yes.
final one.
I mean, I could see that you're also moving into the headphone industry right now,
Uh-huh.
and I mean, you have many competitors there that
Yeah.
have kind of the same concept, like Bagi, for example. I think it's also
I know,
James,
yeah.
right? And they are so specialized on these wireless headphones.
Yeah.
How do you see that as competition right now?
I think the headphone market is extremely diversified. Some of them are targeted towards athletes and the actual monitoring of yourselves. The Bragi, for example, does that. And then you have the music consumption, which is another vertical. And then you have kind of blended, where some is for exercise and some is for consumption. I think the market is just growing bigger and bigger and bigger. I have, 3 or 4 headsets for different use, right? Whereas, 5 years ago, you'd have one and try to make that work for everything. And you're probably going to be having even more, soon. Because you want the experience to be optimal for what you're using it for. So I think there's lots of space to compete in, and Libratone has decided to be in this vertical. We're not in the the Bragi vertical where it's doing that, but it could be going that way. But there's lots of space, I think. The other thing is the headphone industry is extremely profitable. Even the biggest headsets cost nothing to produce. So if you buy like a 1,000 or 2,000 krona headset, it's probably cost them 100 krona max to produce. So it's a lot of margin, which is why there's a lot of banks in there.
Cool. Thank you very much, Tommy.
Yeah.